All right, hey everybody, this is Dr. Alice Gotay. So my giants are looking at this. This is weird. This should show you just kind of how different I would like to say that I am from the different talks and doing what it is that I do now. I've realized just like how different the world comes to me. And so for me, the very first person, obviously, I would have to say is Jesus. Now, coming to a realization of who Jesus is in your life makes you look at your life differently. So I would like to say, of course, first and foremost, it is God himself, Christ himself. But Christ has a way of like working into your life and making you evaluate the things that you've gone through and where it is that you're at and where it is that you're going. And so for me, I would really say the person there's a few people who really got me to look at Jesus and open myself up to who it is that he is. And I know this is gonna sound weird. Every time I say this, like people just like look at me like I'm crazy. So there's two people on opposite ends of the spectrum. The first, honestly, if you knew me, I mean, look at me. I am hip hop. That's my culture. That's how I grew up by far. When I tell people my story, they're like, wow, you really are. Like, yeah, I grew up. This is how I am. So the first philosopher that I would like to say that really kind of poured into me, made me look at the world differently, was actually Tupac. It's funny, man. I have stories where like I go speak to certain people and I'm always like, hey, I have this poet that I used to listen to. Now, these are like educated people. I'm talking about doctors, priests, nuns, so forth. And I quote, after the darkest night comes the lightest day. And I've had people tell me through the years, like, oh my gosh, yo, that's so good. I think I've read that poetry before. I'm like, no, you haven't. I know you haven't. They're like, well, why you say that? Because I'm thinking in my head, because that's Tupac, you know? There's little quotes and stuff that I've, listened to through the years that spoke to me, that let me know that the pain that I was going through from childhood and the different things of my adulthood, Tupac was the first person that made me look past the world that was going on right in front of me and kind of spoke to me in a language that was real to me and the language that spoke to my heart. So I would definitely say that's the first. But like I said, there's also somebody else who I look at who, especially for somebody like myself, both faith and culture. And I know when I say this other person, people look at me like I'm crazy. The other person is Dr. Martin Luther King. I remember hearing his story. I grew up in very multicultural environments. And I remember, I mean, man, I have so many stories with that. But I remember hearing Dr. Martin Luther King in elementary. I remember the day I heard him. And I remember even back then, I was like, man, there's something about this guy. And as the years like have gone on, like reading his speeches, listening to his speeches and everything, reading his life story, it spoke to me again. And then if you know Martin Luther King, Dr. King, he was a very faith-filled, a lot of people don't realize this, he was really, really faith-filled. And this is where he got his way of thinking is philosophy and look at the world behind you, beyond you and so forth. So that really spoke to me in a number of ways. And I know, so the people that I'm sitting here talking about, as I'm talking about this, these people, I never really met them per se, like, hey, how's it going? Martin Luther King, Tupac, Jesus, like, hey, how's it going? To an extent with Jesus. But that should tell you what type of person I am is, I realized like through the years, if you know me, 3 masters, my doctorate and everything, I went to school, Acres Homes, all the different things. But I've realized through the years is our circumstances don't dictate who it is that we are. And one of the things that can make us and pull us out of that is our way of thinking. And we use this a lot in sports psychology, especially if you compete at high levels, is I think and I need to move on that. But for me, it was always more than just the sports. I am a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been playing sports my whole life. And that, if you know me, that does play a small part in me. But I've realized like that only leads to a certain point, kind of like the Tupac thing. It led to a certain point, but I needed more. And what fulfills, at least for somebody like myself, is there has to be more to all of this. I mean, there's too many different things that point to even just the great, to say that that's something great. What's the measure of standard? Even for myself, even as a kid thinking about these things. So if you see the different people that I've said, each one of them have kind of like poured into that. And if you know me as a person, you know every part of that is a lot of bit of me. Now I'm sitting here thinking about it, but it's fulfilled especially in my life, is in Jesus. So those are mine.